Before we crack open tonight's cursed can of content, I just want to say a big thank you to all our subscribers, and an extra sinister shout out to the loyal members of the Sinister Elite. You legends help keep the darkness alive. If you're enjoying the stories and want to take it a step further, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and consider joining the Sinister Elite by clicking that join button below. Members get access to creepy custom emojis and exclusive Sinister Elite badges that level up the longer you survive with us. It's like loyalty, but spookier. All right, lights off, headphones in, and let's summon something we'll all regret. I run the night ferry across the Missouri River, and if you think that sounds like a chill job, just a guy pushing a boat back and forth under the stars, let me go ahead and slap the fantasy out of you. It ain't like the movies where the ferryman wears a cloak and asks for coins. I wear a busted Carhartt jacket, smell like diesel and river mud, and my coin is a wad of singles some trucker drops in the lockbox because his GPS doesn't know the bridge is 40 miles away. But I'll say this, I love it. There's a strange comfort in the rumble of the ferry's old diesel engine, the sway of the current, and the fact that I don't have to deal with bosses breathing down my neck. At night, it's just me, the river, and whoever rolls up needing to cross. Sometimes that's a tired farmer, sometimes a fisherman with too much beer in his cooler, and sometimes folks I swear I've never seen on either side of the river before. Now, the old-timers didn't just hand me the keys and tell me, "Good luck, son." They gave me 3 rules. 3 ironclad survival rules that keep the Missouri River from swallowing you whole. Rule 1. Do not stand by the edge of the boat. If you peek over the rail, you'll get taken. Rule 2. If you hear something in the water, do not investigate. Rule 3. Stay by the light. Sounds dramatic, right? Like some campfire ghost story. But here's the thing. When every old-timer repeats the same rules word for word, you stop laughing and start listening. My first night on the job, I laughed at Rule 1. Who in their right mind wants to lean over the rail of a ferry at night? The Missouri River looks like a moving oil slick after sundown, black, sluggish, and full of God knows what. But I asked Hank, the guy who trained me, why the warning was so specific. He just muttered, "People get curious, and curiosity don't float." Rule 2 is even worse. If you hear something in the water, do not investigate. What kind of something? Splashing? Screaming? Mermaids singing Taylor Swift? Hank wouldn't answer, just stared out at the dark river like it had a face. Rule 3 made the most sense. The ferry's deck has big mounted floodlights that cut through the dark. Bugs love them. So do the drunks. But apparently, the lights aren't just for safety. They're for survival. "Stay by the light," Hank said. "It doesn't like the light." And then he spit into the water like the river had insulted his mother. Locals call the thing that lurks in the Missouri a lot of names. River devil, mud serpent. My favorite, the thing that drags. Apparently it's been around for generations. Some say it's older than the river itself, something that slithered into the channel when the land first split. Old stories tell of fishermen who vanished, whole cattle herds disappearing by the bank, or children dragged under when they leaned too far on a pier. Now, whether you believe that or not, I'll tell you something straight. Working nights on this river, I've seen enough shadows move, in ways they shouldn't, that I don't laugh at the rules anymore. But back then, my first run, I thought the whole thing was funny. Picture this. Me, a thermos of coffee that tastes like burned socks, and a drunk farmer named Clyde, who kept asking if I'd let him fish off the back. We hadn't even pushed off yet, and he was wandering toward the rail with his pole like the rules were just polite suggestions. "Hey," I said, waving him back. "Don't stand by the edge." "Why not?" he slurred. "Because you'll get taken." He blinked at me. Taken? Like by taxes? I laughed so hard I nearly spit coffee on my boots. But then Clyde leaned closer to the rail anyway, squinting down at the black water swirling below. For a moment, I swore the ripples shifted, like something big rolled just under the surface. I grabbed Clyde by the back of his overalls and yanked him away. He stumbled, cussed, and nearly dropped his pole. "Don't," I said, dead serious now. And that was when the sound came. Soft, bubbling, like something exhaling just beneath us. Clyde froze. His eyes went wide. "You hear that?" he whispered. I tightened my grip on his jacket and stared at the water. Rule 2 slammed into my head like a hammer. If you hear something in the water, do not investigate. So I did what the rule said. I didn't move closer. I didn't lean. I didn't breathe too loud. I just pulled Clyde back toward the floodlight and kept my eyes on the deck. The bubbling stopped. The ferry rocked once, hard. Clyde sat down on a bench, pale as a ghost, clutching his fishing pole like it might save him. "Think I'll wait to fish on land," he muttered. "Smart choice," I said. We rode the rest of the crossing in silence, and that was just night 1. By my second week running the night ferry, I'd started to settle into the rhythm. You'd think piloting a boat back and forth across a mile-wide stretch of river would get boring, but the Missouri has a way of keeping you on edge. The water doesn't just move, it shifts, like it's alive. 1 second it's calm, the next it's boiling around the hull even when the wind's dead still. But I still had my sense of humor back then. I'd joke with passengers, slap duct tape on things that probably needed professional repairs, and act like the rules were more superstition than necessity. That all changed one night when I got a group of college kids. They were loud, drunk, and cocky. Basically my least favorite kind of cargo. 4 of them, packed into a mud-splattered Subaru. They were headed to some bonfire party across the river. Beer sloshing in the back seat, music rattling the rust off their doors. The second they rolled onto the deck, I knew we were going to have trouble. "Man, this is creepy," one of them said, stepping out of the car. He wore a hoodie that probably cost more than my monthly paycheck. "This your job, dude? Just floating people across the swamp?" "River," I corrected. "And yeah, this is my job. I keep folks alive while they cross." They laughed like I'd told the best joke of the year. "Keep us alive?" "Bro, it's a boat, not Vietnam." I gave them the rules anyway. Always do. "Stay away from the rails. If you hear something in the water, don't go looking. And for the love of God, stay in the light." They looked at each other and grinned. I could already see the wheels turning in their beer-soaked brains. About halfway across, sure enough, one of them, let's call him Chad because of course his name was Chad, wandered toward the edge. He leaned over the rail like he was about to spit in the water. "Hey!" I barked. "Rule 1. Back away." He smirked at me. "What? The river cop's gonna find me?" "No," I said. "The river will take you." The other 3 howled with laughter. But then, quiet, sudden, the water below gurgled. Same sound I'd heard with Clyde that first night, like something enormous had just released a breath right under the hull. Chad froze. His smirk melted into confusion. "What was that?" he whispered. The sound came again, closer. A bubbling, sucking noise, wet and unnatural. I locked my hands on the ferry's wheel and shouted, "Step away from the rail!" The floodlights hummed overhead, buzzing with moths. I didn't dare look down, didn't dare break Rule 2. My whole body went stiff, waiting. The deck jolted, just once, like something had nudged the ferry from below. The college kids screamed, grabbing at each other, stumbling back toward their car. Even Chad bolted from the edge. The bubbling stopped. The river went dead still. And just like that, the danger passed. For a moment, the only sound was the thrum of the engine and my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. One of the girls broke the silence. "What the hell was that?" I stared straight ahead, knuckles white on the wheel. "That," I said, "is why you don't break the rules." They shut up for the rest of the trip. Didn't even look out the windows when we docked. They peeled off the ramp so fast, I half expected the Subaru to flip. I was left standing there alone on the deck, staring out over the river. My laughter, my jokes, all of it felt like it had been stripped away. Because for the second time in as many weeks, I'd felt it. Something was down there. Something that didn't just swim. It hunted. And the worst part? It was patient. After the night with the college kids, I started to take the rules seriously. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd still make jokes when things were calm. A little humor helps when you're standing alone on a floating slab of steel in the middle of a river blacker than sin. But that edge of sarcasm? Yeah, it was dulled. Thing about running the ferry is, you see the same faces a lot. Farmers, shift workers, truckers, people who depend on the ferry like clockwork. And every so often, you get an old-timer who won't just take the ride in silence. They'll talk. And one night, that's exactly what I got. He climbed aboard just after midnight. Weathered face, beat-up hat, jacket older than me. He drove an ancient Ford pickup that looked like it was held together with duct tape and stubbornness. As we started across, he killed the engine and stepped out. No hesitation, no fear. Just lit a cigarette and leaned against the floodlight pole like he'd done it 1,000 times. "Name's Earl," he said, puffing smoke. "You the new nightman?" "Guess so," I said. Earl gave me a look, sharp, like he was measuring me. Then he chuckled. "Bet they told you the rules." "Yeah," I said. "3 of them." He nodded, ash flicking into the dark. "Good. Don't break 'em." Not even for a second I wanted to ask, but he didn't wait. Earl just launched into a story like he'd been holding it in for years. "Saw a man get took once," he said, voice low. "Back in '78, cold spring night. River was running high. He leaned over to take a piss, just like that, and he snapped his fingers. Gone. No splash. No cry. Just gone." My skin crawled. Earl continued. "We looked over the side, of course we did. Saw the water boiling like a pot on the stove. Then we saw the hand, just one, slap against the hull, nails clawing, dragging. Then nothing. Like he'd never been there at all." I swallowed hard. "You didn't investigate?" Earl barked a laugh. "Hell no." We stepped back in the light and prayed we'd make it across. Ferry rocked the whole way like it was being shoved. Didn't breathe easy until we hit shore. The cigarette burned down to a stub. Earl flicked it into the water, and I nearly shouted at him for it. But the river stayed still. He must have seen my expression because he smirked. "Don't worry. It only takes what it wants. Lights keep it off most times. But every once in a while..." He trailed off, staring at the black water. "Every once in a while, it gets bold." The floodlight above us flickered. Just a quick buzz and dim, then bright again. Earl's face tightened. He stepped closer to the pole, resting his hand against the cold metal. "Stay by the light, boy." Always by the light, I didn't move until the ferry thumped against the far bank. When Earl pulled his truck off the ramp, he leaned out his window and said, "You'll hear stories from drunks, from kids. Don't believe them. Believe the rules. They're the only thing keeping you alive." Then he was gone. I stood there alone on the deck, staring at the river, every nerve in my body buzzing. For the first time, I understood. The rules weren't just old wives' tales. They were instructions from survivors. And I'd just joined the list of people who knew why. If the rules are the bones of this job, the lights are the heartbeat. That's what I learned soon enough. The ferry's floodlights aren't pretty. They're old, buzzing sodium lamps that turn everything jaundiced yellow. Bugs throw raves around them every night. And when one burns out, I've got to climb up with a wrench and a prayer that I don't fall in. But those ugly lights? They're the only thing between me and the dark river that wants me gone. So when the first bulb blew mid-crossing, I damn near peed myself. It happened with no warning. 1 second, all 4 lights were humming bright, bathing the deck in safety. The next pop, and the back right corner went black. I was carrying 2 passengers that night, a couple of night shift nurses in scrubs heading home. They were chatting, laughing about a doctor they hated. The sound cut off like someone hit pause the second that light blew. We all turned our heads to the corner, swallowed in shadow. The Missouri River surged up against the hull with a wet thump. The ferry rocked harder than the current should have allowed. Is that normal?" one of the nurses whispered. I forced my voice steady. Stay in the light. Both of you. Middle of the deck. They shuffled close together, wide-eyed. The shadows at the back corner shifted. Not like wind, not like the river moving below, like something standing there, just past where the light cut off. I couldn't see it, but I felt it, like eyes boring through my skull. Then came the sound. That bubbling exhale. Closer this time. Louder. Like something enormous had just surfaced inches away. Every muscle in my body screamed to look over the rail, but Rule 2 echoed in my skull. If you hear something in the water, do not investigate. So I kept my eyes forward, white-knuckled the wheel. Sweat ran down my neck. The ferry jerked again, harder this time, and one of the nurses whimpered. "Almost across," I muttered. "Almost across, just hold tight." That's when the front left light flickered. "Don't you dare," I growled at it. My voice cracked like I was arguing with a dying flashlight. The buzzing grew louder. Flicker, hum, flicker. And in the half-dark, I swear I saw a shape rise at the edge of the deck. Tall, hunched, dripping. No detail. Just an outline darker than the shadows themselves. Its fingers, or claws, curled over the rail. The nurses screamed. I slammed the throttle, pushing the old diesel harder than I ever had. The ferry groaned like it might fall apart under me. The shadow stretched longer like it was reaching, closing the gap between the dark and us. Then the light steadied, bright as the sun, and the shadow was gone. We slammed against the far bank. I dropped the gate before the ferry even stopped rocking. The nurses bolted off, tires screeching as they tore up the ramp. I just stood there, shaking, staring back at the river. My chest heaved, my lungs burned, and my brain refused to process what I'd just seen. But one thing was certain now. The rules weren't just suggestions. They were the only line between me and whatever waited in that water. And if the lights ever went out completely, well, I wasn't sure there'd be enough of me left to find. By now I'd learned to trust the rules. Not just trust them, live by them. I repeated them in my head like a prayer every night. Don't stand by the edge. Don't investigate the sounds. Stay by the light. And still, one night, someone had to go and break one. It was a weekday, dead quiet, sky full of clouds with no moon. The ferry smelled like damp rust and diesel, and I was halfway through a thermos of coffee that could have stripped paint. Just me and a single passenger, a guy in a beat-up Chevy hauling hay bales. He parked, shut the truck off, and stepped out like he owned the place. He didn't look like a farmer, though. His jeans were too clean, his boots barely scuffed. And the way he carried himself? Like a man looking for trouble. I gave him the spiel anyway. Stay in the light. Don't stand at the rail. Don't check the water if you hear anything. He grinned, a grin too wide for someone sober. Heard about your rules, he said. Locals talk. I didn't answer. He walked straight past me and leaned against the edge. The edge. Hey, I snapped. Back from the rail. Now he looked over his shoulder, smile sharp. What's down there, huh? Some big ol' catfish? My stomach nodded. I'm not kidding. Get away. He peered down into the black. Kinda want to see it for myself. The river responded before I could. A deep, bubbling hiss rose from under the ferry. The deck vibrated like something massive brushed the hull. Step away, I barked. My voice shook, but he didn't. The water erupted, a wet slam against the side. The ferry lurched so hard I had to grab the rail. The man laughed, actually laughed, and leaned farther over. That's when I saw it. Something moved under the surface. Not a shadow. Bigger. Vast. The faint glow of the floodlights caught on ridges, scales, something slick and ancient rolling beneath. And then I saw the arm. Not a fish fin, not anything human. An arm. Long, jointed wrong, with too many fingers ending in hooked claws. It stretched up, reaching for him. Move, I screamed. He didn't. The claws hooked around his chest and yanked. There was no splash, no cry, just gone. 1 second he was leaning over the rail, grinning at me. The next he'd been swallowed into the black like he'd never existed. I staggered back, bile burning my throat. The deck reeked, mud, rot, river slime. The water roiled below. The ferry shuddered, nudged from side to side like a toy in a bathtub. Something circled us. The lights buzzed overhead, dimmed. No, 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 I whispered. I scrambled to the center of the deck, clutching the wheel. The floodlights flickered again, moths scattering. And in that flicker, I saw it. A face. Rising from the water just beyond the rail. Not human, not animal. Something in between. Gray skin stretched too tight. A mouth wide, lipless, full of teeth like river rock. Eyes. God help me. The eyes were pale, clouded, but locked on me. Then the light steadied, and it was gone. The ferry drifted. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the throttle. I shoved us toward shore, praying the lights wouldn't die. When we docked, I collapsed against the wheel, sucking air, shaking, sweat dripping cold down my back. I checked the deck. No sign of him. No wallet. No boots. No nothing. Like he'd never been. But I'll tell you this. I know what I saw. And I know the rules aren't enough anymore. After the man in the Chevy got taken, I couldn't sleep. I'd dock the ferry, head home to my shack by the landing, and just sit there staring out the window at the water. The rules had always kept me safe before, but that night proved something new. If someone else broke them, I could still be in the crosshairs. And worse, the thing wasn't just lurking anymore. It was testing. The next few runs were quiet, but I could feel it, like static in the air before lightning. Every time I shoved off, the Missouri seemed to churn faster, pushing harder against the hull. Every gurgle of water made me stiffen. Every flicker of the lights made my heart claw up my throat. Then came the night the lights started failing on purpose. It was late. No passengers. Just me and my nerves. The fog had rolled in thick, muffling everything. The ferry's floodlights cut swaths through the mist, but it felt like shining a flashlight in a haunted house. The dark just ate it up. Halfway across, the front right light went out. Pop, I swore, slapped the casing with my wrench, and it blinked back on. A second later, the back left went out. Pop, buzz. On again. Then the front left, then the back right. One after another, flickering like some invisible hand was playing with the switch. The water below churned, steady, deliberate, circling the hull. Shh, lurp. Shh, lurp. The sound of something massive gliding just under the surface. My skin crawled. Not tonight, I whispered. Please, not tonight. The ferry shuddered. Once, twice, like it was being nudged from below. Then harder, a slam that rattled bolts loose from the rail. And then, darkness. Every single light went out. The silence was absolute. The hum of the lamps, the engine's thrum, even the insects, all snuffed out. The only sound was water lapping at the deck. I froze, clinging to the wheel. Rule 3 screamed in my skull, stay by the light. But there was no light. The deck felt smaller without it. The night pressed in, thick and suffocating. I could smell it, the rot, the damp, the sharp copper tang of blood. Then footsteps, wet, slapping footsteps across the steel deck. I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't dare move, didn't dare look. Rule 2, do not investigate. The footsteps circled, slow, deliberate. My breath came shallow, ragged. Something brushed the back of my jacket, cold, slimy, wrong. I clenched my eyes shut and muttered the rules under my breath like scripture. Stay by the light. Don't investigate. Don't stand by the edge. The thing exhaled, right behind me, hot and damp against my neck. And then, click. The lights blazed back to life. The deck was empty, but the rail was dripping. Dark slime ran down the metal in long streaks, bubbling like it was alive. It sizzled where it touched the deck, eating tiny pits into the steel. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. The Missouri rolled on calm as glass, as if none of it had happened. That was the night I realized the rules weren't rules anymore. They were a warning, a clock ticking down. Because whatever's in that river, it's getting bolder. By now, every run across the river felt like flipping a coin. Would the lights hold? Would the rules still matter? Would the thing finally decide it was my turn? I kept telling myself I'd quit. Walk away. Let someone else take the night shift. But here's the truth. No one else wanted it. Everyone in town knew the ferry had rules, and everyone knew breaking them meant you didn't come back. If I quit, the whole crossing would shut down. Farmers couldn't haul hay. Truckers would be stranded. Nurses, welders, late-night workers, they all counted on me. So I stayed. The night it happened, I had a full load. 2 pickups, a minivan, and a couple on a motorcycle. Families, kids, people who'd never even heard the rules. I gave the speech anyway, my voice hoarse. Don't stand at the edge. Don't check the water if you hear anything. Stay by the light. The dad in the minivan chuckled. What, is this like a haunted house thing? No, I said flatly. This is survival. The ferry groaned forward, the Missouri swallowing us in fog. The lights hummed, bugs dancing in the glow. For a few blessed minutes, everything was calm. Then the motorcycle guy broke Rule 1. He stepped off, helmet tucked under his arm, and leaned against the rail like he was posing for a magazine. His girlfriend snapped a picture on her phone. I nearly dropped the throttle. Hey, step back, now! He smirked. What's gonna happen, man? Bigfoot gonna... The water exploded. Something slammed against the side of the ferry, hard enough to rattle every vehicle on deck. The minivan kids screamed. The pickup's alarms went off. The girlfriend dropped her phone. And then the hand, long, gray, dripping, curled over the rail right beside him. Holy shit! He shouted, stumbling back. The girlfriend shrieked as the claws snapped shut where he'd just been standing, scraping deep gouges into the steel. Middle of the deck! I roared. All of you! They clustered near the lights, pale, trembling. The water boiled around us, the ferry rocking violently. The face rose then, half hidden by mist, but close enough that I could see its teeth glistening in the glow. Rows and rows of jagged stone-colored teeth. The kids in the van cried harder. Their mom clutched them like she could shield them from it. The creature's gaze locked on me. The lights flickered. Stay close, I yelled. Don't move. Don't... Pop. One of the bulbs blew. Darkness swallowed the back left corner of the deck, and something stepped into it. I didn't see details, just a hulking outline dripping with river muck, its head nearly brushing the lamps that were still alive. The air reeked like rotting fish and rust. The passengers screamed. Someone bolted, ran toward the front, too close to the shadow. Stop! I shouted, but it was too late. The shape lunged, long arms, claws flashing, a single shriek, and then silence. The shadow melted back into the darkness, dragging the unlucky man with it. The others pressed closer to the lights, sobbing, shaking, muttering prayers. I jammed the throttle, forcing the ferry forward. The engine whined, metal rattling like it might split apart. The creature circled, slamming against the hull, trying to knock us loose. The deck shivered under my boots. Hold on, I yelled, teeth gritted. We slammed into the far bank so hard one of the pickups nearly rolled. I dropped the gate, screaming at everyone to get off. Tires squealed, engines roared. People scrambled like rats from a sinking ship. When the last wheel left the deck, I collapsed against the wheel, chest heaving, hands shaking. The ferry was quiet again, calm, but I couldn't stop staring at the gouges in the rail. Deep, hooked grooves. Proof that the thing wasn't just a story. Proof that the rules weren't enough anymore. Because it wasn't just hunting the edges now. It had stepped on board. The night after the creature climbed aboard, I almost didn't show up. I sat in my truck on the bank with the engine idling, staring at the black sweep of the Missouri, hands clenched so tight on the wheel my knuckles went white. I could have driven away, could have left the ferry chained to the dock forever. But the horn of an 18-wheeler blared behind me. Headlights cut through my rear window. A line of cars and trucks stretched back into the fog, waiting to cross. Farmers, nurses, night workers. People who needed me. And I knew. If I didn't run the ferry, the rules wouldn't matter anymore. Folks would try to cross on their own. Boats, rafts, whatever. And the river would eat them alive. So I shoved the truck in park, stepped out, and boarded the ferry. The first few runs were calm. Too calm. Like the river was holding its breath. My nerves frayed with every crossing. Every flicker of the lights felt like a countdown. Then came midnight. The fog thickened so much I couldn't see the far bank. Only me, the ferry, and the black water stretching forever. No passengers this time. Just me alone. My thermos half empty. My guts knotted. Halfway across, the lights started flickering again. Not random this time. One by one. Front right, pop. Back left, pop. Front left, pop. Until only one light remained. I stood dead center, bathed in its sickly glow, every instinct screaming to run. The river below boiled, bubbles rising in slow, deliberate bursts. Then the ferry lurched, hard, harder than ever before. I fell to my knees, skinning them against the steel deck. The floodlight above me flickered once, twice, buzzing like it was laughing, and then darkness. All the lights were gone. The silence pressed in, thicker than the fog. I couldn't see my own hands, couldn't even see the rail, but I could hear it. Footsteps, wet, dragging, circling me on the deck. I pressed my back to the wheel, trembling, whispering the rules to myself. Don't stand at the edge. Don't investigate, stay by the... There was no light anymore. The footsteps stopped. A wet hand brushed the side of my face. Cold, slimy. The claws scraped my cheek, slow, almost gentle. My stomach dropped. Then came its breath, hot, damp, and rank with river rot, right against my ear. And a voice, not human, not animal. A sound bubbling up from the riverbed itself. You are... mine. I screamed, slammed the throttle forward blindly. The ferry groaned, engine coughing, pushing us through the dark. I couldn't see a thing, but I kept the lever down, praying, begging, sobbing. The footsteps followed, heavy, shaking the deck. The ferry rocked like it was about to tip. Metal screeched as claws raked across the hull. And then, light. Not from the ferry, from the bank. The far shore came into view, lanterns burning on the dock. Someone had lit every lamp they had, torches waving like signals in the fog. The thing hissed, a sound like steam and screams all at once. The footsteps retreated. The ferry steadied. By the time I hit the bank, the deck was empty again. Just me. My cheek still burning where it touched me. The rail scarred with fresh gouges. The townsfolk were waiting, pale and wide-eyed. They didn't ask questions. Just helped tie the ferry down and backed away, crossing themselves like they'd seen the devil. I sat there until dawn, staring at the slime streaks still hissing against the steel. And I realized something. The rules had kept me alive this long, but they weren't just rules. They were a warning, a stopgap. Because whatever lurks in the Missouri River, it's learning. And the next time the lights go out, I don't think anyone's making it back. After that night, when the lights died and the thing whispered in my ear, I knew I was on borrowed time. The rules had bent, twisted, and nearly snapped. And now the creature wasn't just testing me. It was hunting me. I told myself I'd quit, swore I'd never push that ferry off the dock again. But the very next night, there was a line of trucks stretching down the dirt road, headlights cutting through the fog, people waiting, depending on me. So I climbed aboard. One more run, I told myself. One last crossing. The load was heavy, 3 pickups, 2 semis, and a handful of folks on foot. Farmers, truckers, workers heading to the next shift. I gave them the rules louder than ever. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. Stay away from the edge. Don't check the water if you hear something. Stay in the light." They nodded nervously. Some laughed. I didn't. Halfway across, the air changed. The river grew still. Too still. Not a ripple. Not a wave. Just glassy black, stretching in every direction. And then, the lights went out. Not flickering this time. Not one by one. All at once. Dead. Screams ripped through the dark. Boots pounded the deck. Someone stumbled against the rail. I couldn't see. Couldn't breathe. "Stay in the middle," I shouted. My voice cracked, drowned out by the sound of the river erupting. Something massive slammed the ferry, lifting the deck on one side. Metal screeched. Car shifted, tires squealing against steel. One of the semis slid, teetering toward the edge. And then it was there. The creature. It didn't hide this time. It rose out of the water like it owned it. Twice the height of a man. Body dripping with river muck and scales slick as oil. Its arms were too long, ending in claws sharp enough to carve the hull. Its mouth split wide, rows of stone-colored teeth grinding like it was savoring the meal before it even began. And the eyes, dead white, but locked on me. Chaos erupted. A farmer bolted for the rail, screaming. He didn't even make it. One claw shot forward, hooked him mid-stride, and yanked him screaming into the dark. A woman collapsed to her knees, sobbing. A trucker fired a pistol into the dark, shots echoing uselessly across the water. The creature barely flinched. It stepped onto the deck. The steel groaned under its weight. I scrambled to the wheel, jamming the throttle forward, praying the old diesel wouldn't fail. The ferry bucked, the deck tilting under its bulk. The passengers clung to each other in the dark, sobbing, screaming. The semi slid closer to the edge with a shriek of metal. The headlights flickered as it tipped, then crashed into the river with a splash that shook the ferry. The creature roared, not a sound of pain, a sound of triumph. I made a choice then. Not survival, not escape. Just one, last, desperate act. I yanked the emergency release. Sparks flew. The old floodlight housings overloaded and exploded. Blinding white fire ripped across the deck, a wall of light. The creature screamed, high, furious, rattling my bones. Its skin sizzled under the glow, steaming, bubbling. It reeled back, claws flailing, teeth gnashing. I pushed the throttle until the engine howled. The ferry surged forward, throwing us into the shallows. The creature thrashed, one arm lashing out, tearing a gouge across the deck inches from me. Its teeth snapped, its breath hot against my face. But the light held, and with one last hiss it sank. Gone. When we hit the bank, survivors poured off the ferry, running into the night without a word. No one looked back. Not at me. Not at the gouges. Not at the river. I stood alone, the deck still smoking, the rail still dripping slime. My cheek burned where it had touched me. And I knew the truth. The rules weren't enough anymore. Not for me. Not for anyone. Because that night, for the first time, I'd seen fear in its eyes. And fear means it's not done. Fear means it will come back. Fear means the Missouri River is just the beginning.